There's a part of me that ever wants to remain relevant to that which is going on in life. It wants to remain relevant to what is taking place, what is going on, to be able to see the present, understand it in relationship to the past, and to be able in some kind of way look at the future and to actually, by virtue of where we're going, to determine where we are. Because when it comes to the aspect of the future determining the meaning of the present, it is vital that we have that in our minds as to what we're doing, why we're here, and everything like that. This is the Restore Executive Life and Leadership Coaching and Consulting. I will restore broadcast. Blessings. There's a little bit of awareness of vision. Wake now, woke now. You will notice that we are seeking to record both in regard to the audio of this particular podcast and then also seeking to have the visual, the video recorded as well. The background that you see, as I've said before, is from a drawing. It's called the Mu'at, which stood for Truth, Justice, and Order. In the Egyptian society, there were 144 laws that the individual was trained to abide by, live by, and work with. And so that was the order, the way that order was established in ancient Egyptian society. And so that's the item that I have in the back. I received it, as I've said before, in 2005 when I went to Egypt with my professor from Howard University. The thing that I'm working with today is again to make sure that there's a clear understanding, as clear as possible. You may have to listen to a number of these broadcasts in order to get it, because nowhere have I been where I just grasp in one moment that which is being taught by anybody. Nor do I grasp it in one moment. Any book that I've read that is a book of substance, I read it over and over again, and then I have a eureka moment in which there is something that pops, and I all of a sudden understand what is being written or what has been written. And so it takes time, but it's worth it. The destination is worth the journey. When you're committed to where it is that you're going, when you're committed to what it is that you're doing, then you go through the process to learn how that is done. And my hope is that that is the same with you, the same thing that you're working with when it comes to the way that you're working with the material in this particular item as well. That's my prayer in regard to even the robe that I'm wearing right now, the item that I'm wearing. I got that as well from Egypt when I went there. It was a very interesting experience, amazing really, to be in Egypt. I was able to go to Luxor and stood in what was considered by them the most holy place. The most holy place was a place where the Pharaoh, God, the emperor, if you will, but the Pharaoh was the name that they had, what we might call a president or a king, or they called it the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh and the high priest, the leader of the priestly individuals there, stood in this certain spot. and they stood there on a certain day. And that day was one of the most holy days, if not the most holy days that there was in the Egyptian calendar. It was important that they both stand there, show their unity. It was vital that they be there. And then there was a way that the sun would shine between the two of them. And if the sun shined at that particular moment, they were there, no matter what was going on with them or between them or anything else. There was a way that the sun shined because they were both there, and it would shine between them, and that would signal that the Nile would rise, and that the Nile's rising was a signal that the land would be fertilized. And then the land being fertilized would mean that the crops would grow and there would be a good harvest. And so it was vital. And they would have around them, as they were there, about 80,000 of their main leaders. They would come and they would all be there. And of course, the main leaders would celebrate there at that particular festival. That was my understanding of what would take place. And I was able to stand there. And indeed, the whole thing was that I stood there, and I don't remember, it might have been Dr. Felder who was standing there with me. But at any rate, the sun shined right there at that particular moment. It was a mystical, magical, spiritual moment for me, a metaphysical moment. And the individuals who were around me, those who were from Egypt, our guides and everything like that, witnessed this particular thing. And pretty much from that moment, they guided me and picked out various things that it was vital that I have. Their particular items, and this is one of the items, the robes that I have. These are other items that I have, and I have another picture as well, which has to do. People think it has to do with the whole idea of dying, but it's actually training that the individual who would become the pharaoh, that person had to go through, and that person had to be trained so that he could become a pharaoh, and that training was important. And so it was called the weighing of the heart. And so I've learned over the course of years to understand what is involved with that. The thing that we work with is this idea of the 8 A's, and we've talked about the 4 D's, and we've talked about the 4 steps. We mentioned all of these, and we have what we call also, this is in addition to perhaps what you've heard before in regard to both the visual and perhaps the audio, we have what we call the restore matrix. Many of you may remember a long time ago, I forget what year it was, but the year when what was called The Matrix came out. The Matrix was a very influential movie as far as I was concerned, because really The Matrix talked about a world that existed that most people were not aware of. They were not aware of. And the others who were aware of it understood how to navigate, certain individuals understood how to navigate within the Matrix. And as a result of that, they lived a particular life. And there's more to that story than just entertainment, in my estimation. It's not the first time that such an idea has come forth. As a matter of fact, the idea is very ancient, to tell you the truth. Let me tell you a couple of places that you can see the idea in ancient society. One place is in the writings of a person called Plato. Plato, if I understood correctly, had a illustration that he used called the cave, or the allegory of the cave, or the story of the cave. And in Plato's allegory of the cave, if I remember correctly, there were 4 individuals, you can call them prisoners, if you will, but they were 4 individuals who were in a cave. And they faced a particular way, and they basically could not move. They could not turn around or anything like that, but they faced this particular wall. And on that wall, there were shadows that came forth and marched before them from the standpoint that they could see them. They were not looking at people, they were seeing shadows of people. The people were individuals, they were seen as individuals, let me put it that way, were behind them. And then their shadows were cast on the wall by virtue of fire, which was also behind them. But they could not look around and see the actual people. They were chained in such a way that they could not see the reality, if you will, of the people. All they could see was the shadows. And they would march on a daily basis, I guess, or something to that effect, across the stage that was behind the individuals who could not look forward. All they could do, could not look backwards, all they could do was look forward. And for them, that was their life. That was their entire understanding of what the world was all about. And they would perhaps talk to each other and talk about what the shadows were doing as if it were real. And they continued in that particular item. And you can get Plato's allegory of the cave. It's something that's probably found online. If you would like, I can send you a copy of it. But it's illustration of what was basically the idea behind the Matrix. And so these individuals were there for a lifetime sometimes, and then others were there, and they basically did this on an ongoing basis. And it illustrated the aspect of the way people live their lives in this day and time, even, that there are some things that people do not see. They do not understand, they do not know, and they have in mind that this is what takes place, and the only thing that can take place is what they understand based on the way they have been trained in life. And so this is also what the Matrix was portraying. And so the allegory of the cave is the name of the item. So why do I say these things? Because it becomes very important for an individual when they are growing, when they are maturing, that they begin to understand or to examine what are the shadows that they are looking at that they are calling reality. And how do you determine that you're looking at something and call it reality? How do you arrive at that particular point that you recognize that you want something different? Well, one way is that when you begin to complain. One way is that when you begin to complain. There are a number of ways that project you to the point where you decide that you want to wake up. One way is that you begin to complain. Another way is that you have a vision, as we call it. You arrive at a point that something happens that gives you the idea that there could be something better than what you have. And it doesn't matter how much you have. It's just that at some point you say there could be something better. You may see somebody with something better and say that, you know, I see this and I want this for myself. And it's something that you recognize. You may see that another person has a standard of living or a particular position or whatever it may be. It may be somebody that you knew as a child or that you saw in a television show, a movie, or whatever it may be. But some kind of way, there's something inside of you that says that could be me. And you begin to feel within yourself that that could be you. And then there's what we call perturbation. And perturbation is something that occurs that's painful and everything like that. And it takes you basically to the end of yourself, and there's nothing that you can do. And we sometimes look at perturbation as like a phoenix. A phoenix is a bird, the ancient bird that was supposed to have died, and then it came back to life. Perturbation. And my illustration for that is northern pines that were in a particular forest. And that particular forest, normally, the seeding of the forest took place as a result of the forest burning down. And the reason why that took place is that the pine cones only opened at a point where the heat was hot enough so that the cones would open up. The resin inside of the cones would melt, dry up, and then as a result of that, a new set of seeds would come out, and out of that would come a new forest, perturbation. And I think an individual won the Nobel Prize as a result of that particular study that he called perturbation in regard to that. And so there may be others. People may lose an individual that they love, and then they go through a particular process, and as a result of that, they see that there's a need to go forward as far as life is concerned. And therefore, they wake up to a new life and a new possibility. Businesses decide we need to go forward. I need a new vision. There may be competition, there may be regulation, all of those kinds of things come when it comes to the aspect of waking up. And so they say that the matrix that I've been in, or the cave that I've been in, or the way that I've been working with things, I need to change. I need to grow. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about this aspect of awareness or vision or coming to a place where you want something different than what you've had before. And so we actually go through the process where we use our AAs and we help individuals as a result of waking up. And you cannot do anything. The person cannot do anything with an individual, as far as I'm concerned, who does not wake up or does not commit themselves to a change. Because there's something significant, by the way, about an individual who becomes awake, becomes committed to the aspect that they want something different. Now, this item that I just mentioned is vital. And you will have me actually arrive at the point where I will read an item from an individual called Thomas Thorward. The last name is spelled Troward. There are a few items that he has in regard to this. This is the first time that you may have heard me ever mention this individual, but I am an expansive reader of items, and I feel like that I'm actually led to individuals. I may hear a teacher of mine mention a particular individual. I may read a book, and inside of that book there is a mention of a particular individual, or there may be something that I'm just led, and I get those books. All of those things have happened to me. And Thomas Thorward is someone that I was introduced to by all of those items that have taken place. But inside of one of his books, there is a discussion on desire. Remember I said the first D is desire. And that's when you have something inside of you that's pulling you forward. There's a vision inside of you that's pulling you forward, in my estimation. Now, perturbation can be seen as the aspect of that, like one of my professors said, that it's like spirit kicking you forward, making you go forward in regard to that. That can be very painful, at least it was for me. And then there is also when a vision pulls you forward. I think it's Margaret Wheatley that talked about the aspect that there is this aspect of a vision being a field, energetic field. And there's another one of my teachers who talked about there being an ocean of devotion, an ocean of devotion. That's all of those are ways to talk about a field. And we, as I said, mentioned the Restore Matrix. That's a field that has an energy to it. There's an energy to it. Let me mention this in real life as I understood it. I read the other day that there was this group of individuals, I think 17 people in the state of Georgia, 17 families perhaps in the state of Georgia, that bought an entire city. There are 17 individuals, 17 families that bought 97 acres of land. Now, a whole lot of people are complaining about this, that, and the other as to what goes on in the United States of America. However, these individuals bought 97 acres of land with the intent that it would become a municipality, I believe it's called, a town, a city, a county, whatever it may be. And they have this vision of what they're going to do with this land. Now, it's a miracle, if you will, to get 4 people, 5 people, 10 people, whatever it may be, to come together. But they had 17 that agreed, and they came up with the funds that they needed in order to buy 97 acres of land. And they have a plan, they have a vision that how they're going to go about doing this. Vital that you have a plan, something that's in your mind. And one of my, I say again that one of my clients actually got to the point that he had what I call a 5-page business plan. He had a vision of what he wanted to do with his life. And we worked with him. He achieved that vision and much more in regard to that. And so he's working now on his MBA or going forward in regard to get a degree so the individual understand that how you put this stuff in place step by step by step. And he told me he had made the dean's list. Oh, go for him. And so this whole piece in regard to that is powerful in regard to what individuals are doing when they have a vision. Something inside of them that's moving them forward in regard to this. And so that's what awareness is. That's what awareness is. That's what we're talking about when we speak of awareness. Let me go back again and mention this item about awareness as well. As we talk about the 8 A's, and the first A being A is awareness. There's the statement, if you will, where Jesus says, "It is done unto you as you believe." And I do this item where I talk about, no, it already happened. Now, this is actually also a statement just like what Freud, no, it wasn't Freud, I'll mention Freud in a moment, that just like Plato called it the cave experience. In the allegory of the cave, there's one individual that goes out of the cave. Some kind of way, he gets loose from his chains and he goes out of the cave and actually sees the sunshine. You can imagine having been in this dark cave, and then for the first time, he gets out of the cave and comes up and sees the sunshine. How that must have affected his eyes. He had to get used to that, had to understand that, all the things that go along with that. But he goes out of the cave, and then he is able to be out for a period of time, and after a while, you know, what he wants to do is to really go back and tell his fellow cave dwellers what it was that he saw. Now, if you've ever tried that with any individual, try to have an experience, after you've had an experience, to go back and actually say to them that this is what happened and I want you to experience, you know how challenging that could be. And in the Matrix movie, it says you never, never, never try to cause a person to wake up on their own. Wake up before they're ready. That's absolutely right. Never try to do that. That whole idea. A person must be ready. They must actually get to the point that they are inviting this experience into their life. Now, that's one of the reasons why I like transformative learning theory, because it says basically a person has to choose. You must be hungry. I think that's Les Brown's statement. You must be hungry. You must want something. You must invite it into your life. You must desire it to come into your life. And as a result of that, you attract it to yourself. You attract it to yourself. And so this idea of awareness begins to take place for an individual. Now, again, there is another illustration, if you will. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and it was Freud. Sigmund Freud, I believe his name was. He had an iceberg, and he talked about the aspect that there were, this illustration that he used had it that there was an iceberg, and he talked about that there was the conscious mind, and what he called, I believe he called it the unconscious mind. And he mentioned the aspect that the conscious mind is about 15%, let's say between 5 and 15% of the mind. And then the unconscious mind was something like the other, either 95 or 85% of the mind. The unconscious, that which he used, there's a using of an iceberg that goes along with that. And that's what you don't see. That's what's controlling your life. That's what's controlling your life. Last night, I had the great honor, my wife, Vielka, treated me to going to a place called Wolf Trap. And Wolf Trap, I just disconnected one of my items there. Wolf Trap is a place where there is the staging of movies and plays and that kind of thing that takes place. And what takes place there last night is that we saw the movie, long-time movie, and it goes along with the 8 A's because we've got them connected to the hero's journey and then transformative learning. And if you want to see that, I created what is called a, what do you call it now? A CMAP. A few years ago, created a CMAP. And the CMAP is a way that a person takes an idea and they center it, and then they center it, and then there are other ideas that can be connected to that one idea. And it's something that goes around the world, goes around the world. It doesn't just right here, and it goes around the world. And I created one. You can actually see it on my channel at YouTube. Is that behind it, it actually has a drawing of the CMAP. It's hard to get it all in one place, but that's an actual drawing of the CMAP. So Transformative Learning and the Hero's Journey. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, is that when you look at the item on YouTube, the CMAP is behind me, that item. So when I'm doing live there at YouTube, the CMAP is behind me. And the whole aspect is that the hero's journey. You may know that one of the individuals that counseled Lucas when it came to the creation of the movie Star Wars, which is where I saw the Return of the Jedi, he was counseled by Joseph Campbell, who wrote the hero's journey, or the monomyth, the one myth that was being told all over the world. And that whole piece like that. And so I was there, but the thing that took place there last night was that they had this whole thing of an orchestra. Now, I had seen this and heard this before, but I've never been in the place where the movie is being shown and the music is being played by orchestra. And for me, that was great. My wife, Vielka, treated me to that divine event, you know, and that's the place, the Return of the Jedi. The Jedi who are returned are Anakin Skywalker. He's returned to be a Jedi, and then the Luke Skywalker is a Jedi, and so that's how the Jedi are returned in the whole journey. You can do the 8 A's, and I've done that previously as well. I've lined it up so that it works just with that. And so the whole idea of the 8 A's fit inside that so that the person can say, why? You may ask, why do you use these ways of putting the 8 A's? Well, this is what happened with Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and others. Whether you're talking about a iceberg or whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. What we've learned over the course of time is that individuals rarely want to take a direct approach to that which is hidden from them in regard to their psychological makeup. That's why it's hidden. That's why it's below the conscious. It is something that's difficult for them to handle consciously. And so down beneath, the statement, I think, called Young, why, even though it looks like a J, why Young, is that the cave you fear to enter, will control your life, and you will call it fate, F-A-T-E. As if it was destined for you to do what you're doing. And you'll find yourself in a loop that you keep looping back to because you feel it's what you must do. You say, well, that's just the way I am. That's just the way I was raised. That's what I learned. That's what my environment, that's who I was made to be, all of that. But again, if you're complaining, if you see the need for change, you need to change. If I see the need for change, I need to change. That's why I'm doing this visual presentation. The idea is that I think the world can be better. The world can be better. I think I can be better. That's how the world gets better. And I want to be better. As an individual, I want to be better. And I'm hoping and praying that there are others who, rather than just simply complaining, whether it's about the government, the president, anybody. I've lived nearly 3/4 of a century. I have an uncle who's lived a century. I've studied history ancient and history more current. I've watched the cycle. I think life can be better. Join me in this quest, please. info@iwillrestore.com. Blessings.